Hi everybody, Karen Crisco here from Channeled Wisdom. I am super excited to get in on a topic today, as we know we all have a life story that we've created from childhood and growing up. Each and every one of us do have that story if you hone into it. And I am super excited again about getting in on this topic because it's something that I've struggled with for years and realized that once I set these certain things and I allowed them into my life, I realized how much easier it was to have relationships of all sorts, whether it be personal relationships, friendships, relationships with my family, co-workers, even with my children, and yes, even with the ex. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about boundaries. So we are here all living our own stories and going about our daily work and job and living our life. But what happens when somebody oversteps our boundaries or they disrespect something that we may hold tight in our personal code of ethics that we carry or our standards? Some people may say they're expectations, but I like to put those in and rather hone in on boundaries. So what happens when a family member, a partner, a child, somebody really jumps in and crosses these boundaries in our lives? Well, I know for me over the years, again, I said that I have struggled with it because I did not want to say no. I did not want to disappoint family members and friends and think that, okay, well, if I don't do this, they're going to think different of me, or they may not want to go out and be my friend anymore. But over the years, I realized the toll that that was taking on me, how it was really covering up the emotions, and how I could not have emotions because I didn't want to present them to anybody to think that I was a weak person. So throughout the years and throughout the experience, because it definitely was an experience and it's part of my life story of becoming who I am and finding that confidence, that self-esteem and self-worth, once I realized and coming into myself and finding that relationship within myself, that I needed to have these boundaries. And these boundaries were not out to hurt or destroy anybody. They weren't to be egotistic on any sort, and they weren't to be vain. They weren't trying to push people away and have control. But more so, they were to keep my life and my self-worth, my value in control of my life. So what kind of boundaries are we talking about? Well, we're talking about boundaries of being able to say no and understanding that no is a complete sentence. It is not needing any room for any more comment. If you say no, that person that you're saying no to should respect that and understand there's a reason why you're saying no. And I know from being a parent and having kids and having parents myself that it's something that we always want answers to. Well, you said no. Well, why did you say no? And I get in certain situations there may be a need for some clarification for the other party to respect their boundaries of understanding your no. But there's also times when you need to respect yourself and just say, you know what, no, that's my answer. I'm not going there. I'm not going to do that. Done. This, when you can say no, when you can have boundaries of letting other people in on certain things, like different situations. You may not like the way that your child is coming back at you or treating you for when you ask them to clean up their room, when you ask them to do certain chores. And this is where you need to work together and build boundaries and guidelines for yourself. But also external relationships with other friends or coworkers. You need to have boundaries to understand what is it that you're going to cross, or is if you do cross this certain line, where am I going to step up and say, whoa, we need to back off here a little bit. This is crossing my boundaries. It doesn't mean that I don't want you as a friend. It just means that I'm uncomfortable with crossing this point. And again, if the other person reacts out of anger, it's because they're not respecting your boundaries. And that's where you have to have enough worth and confidence within yourself to say, you know what? You've disrespected and crossed my boundaries. I communicated it appropriately, and I have enough worth, respect for myself to back away no matter what's going to happen. So, again, getting into the deep of boundaries, I know that that sounds like a lot, and it can really, there's so much to uncover really with boundaries and how you use them, how you produce a healthy boundary, what unhealthy boundaries are. But really, again, I want you guys to go after this video is done, and I'd love to hear from you. What are your boundaries? Where have you felt violated by somebody overstepping your boundaries, and how did you react to it? Once you've done that, I really want you to work on yourself as well too, is take a look at, what are my boundaries? Has somebody crossed them? How did I react to it? Or maybe I need to tighten up or loosen some boundaries. And now that you've given that to yourself, you need to go back and look at, am I respecting somebody else's boundaries? And if I'm not, is there a way that we can communicate and have better understanding regarding the boundaries? One last thing I want to get into before we finish this when it comes to boundaries that I want you to know about is that if you do not set boundaries for yourself, what usually happens is as people cross them and they violate them, you tend to build up these layers of resentment and anger, which you end up usually taking out on your children, your spouse, neighbors, friends, coworkers, and it's just that trigger of releasing all of that anger and anxiety and stress that you carry because you did not set your own boundaries. And what happens to these people and individuals that don't have boundaries, they don't respect boundaries, they don't have their own boundaries? Well, they turn into finding habits, whether that habit be substance abuse, addictions, gambling addictions. I mean, the list can go on for so many different other things. There ends up being an addiction because they're covering up the lack of that they're feeling in the boundary settings. So it's never a good thing, and you can see the ripple effect by not holding these in your life or, again, acting on them, what it can really do for yourself. So take time tonight, today, whenever you're listening to this, to really take a look at your boundaries and see and look at who has crossed them, where you've stopped it, how you stopped it, how can you better your boundaries for yourself, and as well as respecting other people's boundaries. We know that when we find that self-love, confidence, and esteem within us, it's a ripple effect on the outside. What we attract on the inside is what we attract on the outside. And remember, it's okay to love yourself. It's okay to be your authentic, organic self, because you are truly worth it. We are all individuals trying to trek through this journey of a world, and if we stand beside one another and can respect one another, love ourselves, to have that love surrounded by others, it's a much easier place to go about living and fulfilling our life purpose and our journey. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.